Jake Martinez stood at the observation deck of Kepler Station, watching the stars disappear one by one. The alien ships were blocking out the light, their massive hulls casting dark shadows across the mining colony that had been his home for the past 8 years. His hands shook as he gripped the metal railing, knuckles white with fear and anger. The first attack had come without warning 3 days ago. The Zephyrians had jumped out of hyperspace like hungry wolves, their weapons already charging before the station's defense systems could react. Now their fleet surrounded Kepler Station like a noose, 12 heavy cruisers and dozens of smaller ships forming a deadly circle around the asteroid colony. "Sir, the shields are down to 30%, called out Ben Carter from the communications station. The young officer's voice cracked with stress. He had been sending distress signals for 3 days straight, but the nearest human fleet was weeks away. Everyone knew help would come too late. Jake turned away from the window and walked across the command center. The room buzzed with activity as technicians worked desperately to keep the station's systems running. Emergency lights cast an eerie, red glow over everything, and the air smelled of smoke and burnt electronics. "How many people do we have in the shelters?" Jake asked Dr. Lisa Park, who was treating a wounded security guard near the medical station. "About 8,000 civilians are in the deep levels," she replied, not looking up from her patient. "The rest are still in the outer sections helping with repairs or defending the docking bays." Lisa had been working without sleep for 3 days, moving from one emergency to another. Her medical uniform was stained with blood and dirt, but her hands remained steady as she bandaged wounds and gave comfort to the scared colonists. She had seen too much death already, and she knew worse was coming. The station shook again as another wave of alien fire hit the shields. Dust fell from the ceiling, and several people stumbled as the artificial gravity flickered. Jake grabbed a support beam to keep from falling, feeling the vibration run through the metal structure of their home. "They're getting stronger," muttered Ray Johnson, the security chief. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his face from years of dangerous work. "My teams are reporting more boarding pods trying to attach to the outer hulls." Ray had been a soldier before coming to Kepler Station. He knew about fighting and dying, but he also knew when a battle was lost. The aliens had too many ships, too many weapons, and too many soldiers. The station's defenses were never meant to hold off a full invasion fleet. In the lower levels of the station, families huddled together in the emergency shelters. Children cried while their parents tried to stay calm, but everyone could feel the fear in the air. The adults whispered about escape plans that would never work and rescue ships that would never come in time. Maria Santos held her 6-year-old daughter close, stroking the girl's hair as explosions echoed through the metal walls. She had come to Kepler Station 5 years ago to work in the mining operations, hoping to build a better life for her family. Now she wondered if they would live to see another day. "Mama, when are the soldiers coming to help us?" asked her daughter, looking up with wide, frightened eyes. Maria did not know what to say. The human fleet was too far away, and the aliens were too strong. She kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "Soon, baby, soon." But Maria knew she was lying. They all knew they were going to die. Back in the command center, Jake received the message he had been dreading. The alien commander was calling on all frequencies, his voice cold and mechanical through the translation systems. "Humans of Kepler Station," the Zephyrian said, "you have fought bravely, but your resistance is pointless. We offer you one final chance to surrender. Lower your shields and open your docking bays. Those who cooperate will be spared. Those who resist will face death." Jake looked around the room at his people. Ben Carter was still trying to reach the human fleet, even though they all knew it was hopeless. Lisa Park was preparing more medical supplies, getting ready for the wounded that would come. Ray Johnson was checking his weapons, preparing for the final battle. "What's our answer?" Ray asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Jake thought about the families in the shelters, the children who deserved a chance to grow up free. He thought about the miners who had worked so hard to build this place, and the people who had called Kepler Station home. He thought about what it meant to be human, to never give up even when everything seemed lost. "Tell them no," Jake said, his voice growing stronger. "Tell them we'll fight to the last person." Ben Carter nodded and opened the communication channel. "This is Kepler Station," he said, his young voice carrying across space to the alien fleet. "We reject your terms. This is human territory, and we will defend it." The alien commander's laughter was like ice. "Very well. You have 6 hours to change your minds. After that, we will take the station by force, and half of your people will die as an example to other human colonies. Use your time wisely." The communication ended, leaving only silence in the command center. Outside the windows, the alien ships moved closer, their weapons glowing with deadly energy. The siege was about to become a massacre. Jake looked at his people one more time, seeing courage in their faces despite the fear. They would fight because they were human, because they protected their own, and because surrender was not in their nature. They would probably die, but they would die free. The countdown to their final battle had begun. Captain Alex Stone sat in the dark command bridge of the UHS Midnight Blade, watching the stars through the main screen. His ship had been running silent for 2 weeks, deep in unexplored space where no human vessel had gone before. The mission was supposed to be simple: map new star systems and look for alien activity along the galactic rim, but nothing was ever simple in space. "Captain, I'm picking up a distress signal," said Sophie Bell from the navigation station. Her voice was quiet, in the darkness of the bridge where only the most essential systems were running. "It's human, sir. Emergency frequency." Alex felt his stomach tighten. They were under strict orders to maintain radio silence during this mission. The Midnight Blade was testing new stealth technology, and any transmission could give away their position to enemy forces. But the word human changed everything. "Put it through," he ordered. The desperate voice of Ben Carter filled the bridge, crackling with static across the vast distance of space. "This is Kepler Station calling any human ships. We are under attack by Zephyrian forces. Repeat, we are under attack. Over 10,000 civilians need immediate evacuation. Our defenses are failing. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help." DQ. Bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Alex looked at the faces of his crew, seeing his own thoughts reflected in their eyes. They all knew the rules about maintaining radio silence, but they also knew what it meant to be human. "How far?" Alex asked. Sophie's fingers danced over her controls, calculating distances and jump routes. 4 days at maximum speed, sir. But that's using the main hyperspace lanes. If we go through the void sector, I might be able to cut it to 2 days. Chief Engineer Carlos Rivera looked up from his station. "Captain, the stealth drive isn't designed for extended high-speed travel. If we push it that hard, we might burn out the whole system." Alex stood up from his command chair and walked to the main screen. Out there in the darkness, human families were fighting for their lives against impossible odds. Children were hiding in shelters while their parents prepared to die. It was exactly the kind of situation that made him join the military in the first place. "Weapons status?" he asked. "All systems ready, sir," replied Danny Kim from the weapons station. "We've got the new kinetic cannon prototypes loaded and ready to test, plus a full complement of missiles and energy weapons." Marine Commander Helen Ross stepped forward from the back of the bridge. "My teams are ready for boarding actions, Captain. We've been training for Zephyrian combat scenarios for months." Alex nodded, making his decision. "Sophie, plot a course through the void sector. Carlos, push the engines as hard as they'll go. Helen, get your Marines ready for immediate deployment." "Sir," Sophie said carefully, "this will put us in direct violation of our mission orders. Command specifically told us to avoid any contact with alien forces." "Command isn't listening to those people die," Alex replied. "We are." The Midnight Blade was unlike any other ship in the human fleet. It was smaller than the big battleships, but packed with experimental technology that made it nearly invisible to enemy sensors. The stealth drive could bend light around the hull, making the ship appear like empty space to anyone looking for it. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, Carlos worked frantically in the engine room to keep the system stable. The stealth drive was making strange noises and the power readings were jumping all over the place. But he had been working with experimental technology his whole career, and he knew how to make impossible things work. "We're pushing into the red zone," Carlos reported over the comm system. "But I think she'll hold together." Amy Foster, the communications specialist, was trying to get more information about the situation at Kepler Station. The distress signals were getting weaker, as distance and interference made contact difficult, but she could still hear the fear in the voices of the colonists. "They're down to 6 hours before the aliens attack," Amy reported. 12 heavy cruisers and at least 30 smaller ships. They're completely surrounded. Helen Ross was briefing her Marine teams in the cargo bay, going over everything they knew about Zephyrian tactics and technology. The aliens were known for their brutality, and they never left survivors unless they planned to use them as slaves. "Remember, these aren't like the pirates we've fought before," Helen told her soldiers. "Zephyrians have better armor and weapons, and they don't feel fear the way humans do, but they also don't think the way we do. They expect enemies to fight in straight lines and follow predictable patterns." Sergeant Tony Clark raised his hand. "What's our tactical advantage, ma'am?" "We're ghosts," Helen smiled. "They won't see us coming until it's too late." On the bridge, Alex studied the sensor readings as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system. The alien fleet was exactly where the distress signals had indicated, surrounding the mining station like hunters around trapped prey. "Take us in dark," Alex ordered. "All non-essential systems offline. We're going to be invisible until we're ready to strike." The Midnight Blade stealth systems engaged, bending light and sensor waves around the hull until the ship became like a hole in space itself. They moved slowly through the asteroid field, using the natural cover of floating rocks to hide their approach. 12 heavy cruisers confirmed, Danny reported quietly, plus destroyer escorts and patrol ships. They've got the station completely boxed in. Alex watched the enemy fleet through the tactical display, counting ships and weapons and calculating odds. 30-1 against, maybe worse. Any other ship would have called for reinforcements and waited for a proper fleet engagement, but the Midnight Blade wasn't any other ship, and Alex Stone wasn't any other captain. "All stations, prepare for combat," he said. "We're going to show these aliens what happens when they threaten human civilians." The ghost ship moved through the darkness, invisible and silent, carrying death toward an enemy that had no idea what was coming for them. The Midnight Blade drifted through space like a ghost, invisible to the Zephyrian fleet that surrounded Kepler Station. Captain Alex Stone studied the enemy positions on his tactical display, counting weapons and looking for weak points in their formation. The aliens had arranged their ships in a perfect circle, but perfect formations often had perfect weaknesses. "Amy, can you reach the station without giving away our position?" Alex asked quietly. Amy Foster worked at her communications station, her fingers moving carefully over the controls. "I think so, sir. If I use a tight beam quantum link, I can bounce the signal off that asteroid cluster. It'll look like background radiation to their sensors." "Do it." On Kepler Station, Ben Carter was still sending distress signals when his equipment suddenly came alive with an impossible message. The voice was calm and professional, speaking in military codes that meant only one thing: the cavalry had arrived. "Kepler Station, this is UHS Midnight Blade. We are in position and ready to assist. Prepare your people for combat operations in 30 minutes. Ben's hands shook as he responded. "Midnight Blade, this is Kepler Station. Are you really here? We can't see you on our sensors." "That's the idea," came the reply. "When the shooting starts, get your people away from the outer hull sections. This is going to get messy." Ben ran to find Jake Martinez, his boots echoing in the empty corridors. Most of the station's population was hiding in the deep shelters, but Jake was still in the command center, refusing to abandon his post even as death closed in around them. "Sir, you need to hear this," Ben said, his voice filled with excitement and disbelief. Jake listened to the message 3 times before he could believe it. 1 human warship against 30 alien vessels seemed impossible, but the military codes were real, and the voice on the radio sounded confident enough to take on the entire Zephyrian Empire. "Tell them we'll be ready," Jake said. "And Ben, tell our people that help has come." The news spread through the station like wildfire. In the shelters, parents hugged their children and whispered that the soldiers had come to save them. Maria, Santos felt tears of relief running down her face as she held her daughter close. On the Midnight Blade, Alex finished his attack plan and called his senior officers to the bridge. The stealth ship hung motionless in the shadow of a large asteroid, completely invisible to the enemy fleet just a few kilometers away. "Here's how we do this," Alex said, pointing to the tactical display. "The Zephyrians have their heavy cruisers arranged in a defensive circle, with destroyer escorts patrolling between them. They think they're safe because they outnumber us, 30-1. Danny Kim looked at the display and whistled softly. "That's a lot of firepower, Captain." "It is," Alex agreed, "but they're arranged for a conventional battle against a conventional enemy. They're not expecting ghosts." Helen Ross leaned forward, studying the alien positions. "What's the plan, sir?" Alex smiled, and there was something cold in his expression. "We're going to appear behind their heaviest ship, put 3 kinetic rounds into their engine section, and disappear before they know what hit them. Then we're going to do it again and again and again." The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. The Midnight Blade's stealth technology would let them strike from impossible angles, appearing out of nowhere to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing back into the darkness. To the aliens, it would seem like they were fighting ghosts. "Weapons. Ready?" Alex asked. "Kinetic cannons loaded with tungsten penetrators," Danny reported. "These new rounds will go through their armor like paper." "Marines ready for boarding actions," Helen added. "We'll take any ships you disable." Alex took his position in the captain's chair. "All stations battle ready. Sophie, take us to our first target." The Midnight Blade moved like a shadow through space, its stealth systems bending light around the hull until it was completely invisible. The ship positioned itself directly behind the largest Zephyrian cruiser, so close that the alien weapons couldn't track them even if they had been visible. "Target locked," Danny said quietly. "Fire." 3 kinetic rounds shot out of the Midnight Blade's cannons at incredible speed, each one carrying the destructive power of a small nuclear bomb. The tungsten penetrators punched through the alien ship's rear armor and exploded inside the engine compartments, sending brilliant flashes of light through the hull. The Zephyrian cruiser died in seconds, its power systems failing as internal. Explosions tore through vital systems. Emergency lights flickered across the massive hull as the ship began to drift, powerless and helpless. "Target destroyed," Danny reported with satisfaction. Before the aliens could react, the Midnight Blade was already gone, moving to its next position like a phantom in the night. The stealth systems made them completely invisible as they repositioned for another attack. On the Zephyrian command ship, Admiral Vextar stared at his tactical display in confusion and growing anger. One of his heavy cruisers had just exploded for no apparent reason, and his sensor operators could find no trace of an attacking vessel. "What happened?" Vextar demanded, his voice filled with mechanical rage. "Unknown, Admiral," replied his tactical officer. "The ship was destroyed by kinetic weapons, but we detect no enemy vessels in the area." "That's impossible. Find them." But before the aliens could begin their search, the Midnight Blade struck again. This time they appeared above another cruiser, firing down through the weakest section of the ship's armor. The alien vessel died as quickly as the first, its hull cracking open like an egg as internal explosions consumed it. "2 down," Alex said calmly. 28 to go. The Phantom ship disappeared again, leaving the Zephyrian fleet in chaos. Ships began firing randomly into space, their weapons lighting up the darkness as they searched for an enemy they couldn't see. But the Midnight Blade was already moving to its third target, invisible and deadly. Admiral Vexitar watched 2 more of his ships die in the next 10 minutes, each one destroyed by an enemy that seemed to strike from nowhere and vanish like smoke. His perfect formation was falling apart as ship captains began moving erratically, trying to avoid an attack they couldn't predict. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "the human station is transmitting a message." Jake Martinez's voice filled the alien command bridge, calm and proud. "This is Kepler Station. We told you we would fight to the last person. We never said we would fight alone." The Phantom had revealed itself, and the real battle was just beginning. Jake Martinez pressed his face against the observation window of Kepler Station, watching in amazement as another Zephyrian cruiser exploded in a brilliant ball of fire. The alien ship twisted and burned as it drifted past the station, its hull glowing red-hot from internal explosions. It was the 7th enemy vessel to die in the past hour, and Jake still couldn't see the human warship that was destroying them. "How are they doing this?" whispered Dr. Lisa Park, standing beside him with her medical kit in hand. She had been treating wounded defenders all morning, but now the flow of casualties had slowed as the alien boarding parties retreated in confusion. "I don't know," Jake replied, "but whoever they are, they're saving our lives." Throughout the station, the mood had changed completely. Where there had been despair and fear, now there was hope and growing excitement. Children in the shelters were asking their parents about the invisible soldiers who had come to rescue them. Adults who had been preparing to die were now talking about rebuilding their homes. Maria Santos hugged her daughter tightly as another explosion lit up the darkness outside their shelter. "See, baby? I told you the soldiers would come." Her little girl looked up with wide eyes. "But where are they, Mama? I can't see any ships." "They're ghosts," Maria said, remembering stories her grandfather used to tell about phantom warriors who appeared when good people needed help the most. Good ghosts who protect us. On the Midnight Blade, Captain Alex Stone was coordinating the most complex battle of his career. His ship moved through space like a deadly shadow, appearing long, enough to destroy an enemy vessel before vanishing again into the darkness. The stealth systems were working perfectly, but the strain of constant combat was beginning to show. "Hull temperature is climbing," reported Chief Petty Officer Sam Hughes from his damage control station. "The stealth generators are running hot, and we've got minor damage to the port armor section." "Can we maintain invisibility?" Alex asked. "For now, sir. But if we take a direct hit, the whole system might go down." Lieutenant Kate Morgan worked frantically at her station, keeping the stealth systems running under combat conditions. Sweat ran down her face as she balanced power levels and adjusted the light-bending fields that kept them hidden from enemy sensors. "Captain, I'm detecting movement in the alien formation," Sophie Bell called out from navigation. "They're trying to regroup around their command ship." Alex studied the tactical display, watching as the remaining Zephyrian vessels pulled back toward their flagship. Admiral Vexitar was no fool, and he was adapting to the phantom attacks by creating a tighter defensive formation that would be harder to penetrate. "They're learning," Danny Kim observed from weapons. "The next attacks won't be as easy." Alex nodded grimly. They had destroyed 8 enemy ships without taking serious damage, but the aliens still outnumbered them more than 2-1, and now the enemy was angry, confused, and desperate. On Kepler Station, Security Chief Ray Johnson was leading a counterattack against the alien boarding parties that had been trapped inside the station when the battle turned. The Zephyrian soldiers were tough and well-armed, but they were also cut off from their ships and surrounded by angry humans who were no longer afraid. "They're falling back to Docking Bay 7, Ray reported over his radio. "Looks like they're trying to reach their escape pods." Jake Martinez smiled as he listened to the reports. An hour ago, his people had been preparing to die. Now they were hunting the aliens who had threatened their families. The Phantom warship had given them more than just military support. It had given them back their courage. But the battle was far from over. Admiral Vexitar was broadcasting orders to his remaining ships, his mechanical voice filled with cold fury as he demanded answers from his tactical officers. 17 ships destroyed by an enemy we cannot see," he said, his clawed hands gripping the command rail of his flagship. "This is unacceptable. All vessels will concentrate fire on the human station. If we cannot find their phantom ship, we will destroy what they came to protect." The order sent chills through the Zephyrian fleet. They would turn their remaining weapons on Kepler Station itself, killing thousands of civilians in an act of pure spite. It was exactly the kind of ruthless tactic that had made the Zephyrian Empire feared throughout the galaxy. Amy Foster intercepted the alien communications and quickly relayed them to Captain Stone. "Sir, they're targeting the station directly. All remaining ships are turning their weapons on the civilian population." Alex felt ice in his veins. The aliens were about to commit mass murder, and the Midnight Blade was too far away to stop all of them. Even with their superior technology, they couldn't be everywhere at once. "Time to intercept?" he asked Sophie. 2 minutes to reach optimal firing position," she replied, her voice tight with stress. "The station's shields won't last 30 seconds against that much firepower," Danny added grimly. Alex made a decision that would have terrified any other ship captain. "Take us in at full speed, maximum power to weapons. Forget about stealth." "Kate," Morgan looked up from her station in shock. "Sir, if we drop stealth, they'll see us coming. Every ship in their fleet will target us." "Good," Alex said, his voice hard as steel. "Let them shoot at us instead of the civilians." The Midnight Blade dropped its invisibility and roared toward the alien fleet at maximum speed, all weapons charging as it raced to save 10,000 innocent lives. The Phantom was about to become very real and very deadly, but Admiral Vextar had one final card to play. As his remaining ships opened fire on Kepler Station, he turned his flagship toward the human warship that had humiliated his fleet. If he was going to die today, he would take the Phantom with him. The final confrontation was about to begin, and only one side would survive it. The Midnight Blade screamed through space toward the Zephyrian flagship, its stealth systems offline and all weapons charging. Captain Alex Stone sat in his command chair, watching the distance close between his ship and Admiral Vextar's massive cruiser. Around them, the remaining alien vessels turned their guns away from Kepler Station and toward the human warship that had finally revealed itself. "All weapons, target their flagship," Alex ordered. "If we're going to die today, we're taking their leader with us." Danny Kim's fingers flew over his controls as he prepared every weapon the ship carried. Kinetic cannons, energy beams, and missile launchers all swiveled toward the Zephyrian command vessel. "Weapons ready, sir. We've got enough firepower to crack that ship open like an egg." "Hull integrity at 90%, reported Sam Hughes from damage control. "We can take a beating, but not for long against this many ships." The alien fleet opened fire first, sending streams of plasma and energy beams toward the approaching human warship. The Midnight Blade's shields flared as the attacks hit, but the advanced defensive systems held firm. The ship had been built to survive exactly this kind of punishment. "Return fire," Alex commanded. The Midnight Blade's weapons erupted in a blaze of destruction. Kinetic rounds punched through the flagship's forward armor, while energy beams carved deep wounds in the alien hull. The Zephyrian ship staggered under the assault, but it was a massive vessel built for war, and it did not die easily. Admiral Vextar felt his ship shake as the human weapons found their mark. Emergency lights flickered on his bridge as damage. Reports poured in from all sections. But the alien commander was not finished yet. He had spent years conquering human colonies, and he would not be defeated by a single Phantom ship. "All power to forward weapons," Vextar ordered. "Ram speed. We will take them with us." The flagship's engines roared to life, pushing the massive vessel toward the Midnight Blade at maximum acceleration. The two warships were now racing toward each other at incredible speed, their weapons firing continuously as they closed the distance. On Kepler Station, Jake Martinez watched the battle through the observation windows. The human warship was outnumbered, 10-1, but it fought with a fury that made his heart swell with pride. Explosions lit up the darkness as the two ships exchanged devastating fire. "They're going to ram each other," Dr. Lisa Park said, her voice filled with horror and awe. "Our people are brave," Jake replied quietly. "They came all this way to save us, and now they're willing to die for us." The colonists throughout the station pressed against windows and viewports, watching their mysterious saviors fight the final battle. Children who had been hiding in fear now cheered as the Phantom ship's weapons lit up the night. Adults who had given up hope now prayed for the warriors who had come from nowhere to protect them. Maria Santos held her daughter up to see through the shelter's small window. "Remember this, baby," she whispered. "Remember how the soldiers came to save us when no one else could." The two warships were now so close that their weapons were firing at point-blank range. The Midnight Blade's kinetic cannons punched huge holes in the flagship's hull, while the alien ship's plasma beams burned through the human vessel's armor. Both ships were dying, but neither would surrender. Hull breach on Deck 3. Sam Hughes reported as alarms sounded throughout the ship. We're losing atmosphere in the forward sections. Shields down to 20%, Kate Morgan added, her voice strained as she tried to keep the defensive systems online. Alex could see the alien flagship's bridge through the main screen, close, enough to make out individual Zephyrians running between control stations. In seconds, the two ships would collide and both would be destroyed in a massive explosion. But Danny Kim had one final surprise for their enemies. Captain, I've got a clear shot at their power core. If I can hit it with our last kinetic round, the explosion will tear their ship apart. Do it, Alex ordered without hesitation. The final kinetic round shot from the Midnight Blade's cannon just as the two ships were about to collide. The tungsten penetrator punched through the flagship's weakened armor and struck the alien power core directly. The explosion was tremendous. A brilliant flash of light that could be seen across the entire star system. Admiral Vextar had just enough time to realize what was happening before his ship disappeared in a ball of fire and twisted metal. The destruction of the flagship sent shockwaves through the remaining Zephyrian vessels, and their formation finally broke apart completely. The surviving alien ships fled into hyperspace, their crews too shocked and demoralized to continue fighting. In less than 2 hours, a single human warship had destroyed their entire invasion fleet and sent them running like frightened children. The Midnight Blade drifted in space, its hull scarred and smoking but still intact. The Phantom ship had survived. The impossible battle, though just barely. Emergency teams worked frantically to repair the damage as the crew celebrated their victory. Kepler Station, this is Captain Stone, Alex said over the communication system. The immediate threat has been eliminated. You are safe. The response from the station was a roar of joy and gratitude that echoed through the comm channels. 10,000 people cheered for the Phantom warriors who had saved their lives. Jake Martinez's voice came through clearly above the celebration. Captain Stone, on behalf of everyone on Kepler Station, thank you. You and your crew are heroes. 3 days later, the rescue ships from the human fleet finally arrived to find Kepler Station intact and its people alive. The colonists told amazing stories about the Phantom warship that had appeared from nowhere to save them. But the Midnight Blade was already gone, disappeared back into the darkness of deep space. The legend spread quickly through human space and beyond. Other alien empires heard whispers about ghost ships that could appear anywhere, anytime, whenever human civilians were threatened. The Zephyrians never attacked another human colony, and other hostile species began to think twice before threatening Earth's children. On distant worlds and space stations, human families slept peacefully, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, Phantom Guardians watched over them. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humanity protects its own, and their reach extends far beyond what anyone imagined possible. The ghosts were real, and they were always watching.